Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. Alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Vigo County leaders are betting on a new casino coming to the community and sparking millions of dollars in investment.
People are spending money on food and alcohol and cigarettes and who knows what. So who am I to judge what they spend their money on? I say bring it on and let it grow this community.
But the proposal has to make it through the State House first. We'll show you how new technology is making it more accessible for the blind and visually impaired. And we've all felt that sense of frustration when you drive over a pothole or rough patch of a road over and over.
We aren't going to know anything unless you pick up the phone and call. So calling with a complaint is the absolutely appropriate thing to do.
Coming up, how road repairs are prioritized in Indiana. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Terre Haute is gambling on a monumental gaming bill moving forward at the State House. Leaders there hope it will help the struggling community hit the jackpot when it comes to economic development. Legislators made big changes to the bill this week, which could move a casino license from Gary to Terre Haute. But as Barbara Brozier reports, some worry what could help a couple Indiana communities could hurt far more.
Downtown Terre Haute looks different these days.
10 years ago, it was kind of like tumbleweeds rolling down Wabash Avenue kind of a thing.
There's more foot traffic and businesses. And the county's working on building a new convention center. But while there are signs of investment, state data shows this is still a community that's struggling. Vigo County ranked second to last in the state for median income in 2017. And it had the third highest poverty rate in Indiana that same year. Like many other mid-sized Midwestern towns, Terre Haute is still working to recover from a series of setbacks.
The economy's been slow. We had a flood here, which much of Indiana and Illinois, and who else had a flood in 2008, and that hurt things. We've had some industry move out, but we've had some industry move in.
That's why some residents and local leaders are going all in on a gaming bill at the State House that they think has the potential to turn things around.
It would be a great economic development tool because, it would give us extra cash that we could use towards economic development and extra revenue for our schools and for our local government to help us compete with communities like Evansville and Fort Wayne.
Legislators amended the bill this week to give Vigo County more of a say in how the proposed casino would take shape. Under the proposal, a Gary casino would pay $50 million to move inland and must give one of its two licenses to Terre Haute. Vigo County voters would have to approve the casino through a referendum, which could happen as early as November.
It is very important to me that the Vigo County, the community of Vigo County, has an opportunity to participate in these discussions. They have an opportunity to find an operator that meets the community's needs.
An advisory board made up of local leaders would get to choose 3 casino operators they feel comfortable with. Then those operators would bid on the Terre Haute license. And while legislators from Vigo County say they're happy with the bill's changes, others still have concerns. Some worry about how an additional casino in the state, coupled with Gary moving its facility inland, will impact existing gaming facilities.
The tax provisions in this bill do not offset the potential revenue impact that we're going to see in Michigan City.
And some legislators worry about people losing their jobs as a result of the Gary Casino's move. An amendment that would ensure employees at that facility a job at the new location failed.
It just ensures that our people don't go from being employed to unemployed because of a decision that we have made and allowed to happen.
Supporters of the measure insist it's good for the entire state. It also legalizes sports wagering, which would bring in about $12 million a year. Although the overall impact of the bill would only amount to about 1/3 of expected state tax collections. But Ford rejects the notion that building a new casino in Terre Haute will hurt other communities.
At the end of the day, I don't think a Terre Haute casino affects Evansville in the way that some might want to think.
More changes are expected as the bill continues to move forward at the State House. And people in Terre Haute are anxiously waiting to see whether the chips will fall in their favor.
By golly, you know, when it's like this, the economy's been like it has been here and in the Midwest for so long, why not try anything and everything we can to make it better for everybody?
I think that the local community is really, for the most part, really behind the idea of a casino being here.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Barbara Brozier.
Lawmakers approved an amendment to the bill Thursday to increase transparency. It was in response to a report that Governor Eric Holcomb met privately with the Gary Casino CEO. The amendment would require lawmakers to make those types of meetings public. Now for headlines, we go over to Barbara Brozier, who has the latest on this week's top stories.
Thanks, Joe. Indiana Senator Todd Young says he met with a representative from Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's government months ago to try and get answers about why a Bloomington man has not been released from a prison there. Police arrested Todd Leininger when he was visiting the country in 2014. He was convicted of attempted homicide and concealing a firearm, but a court ordered his release in November. Leininger remains in prison. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he's still working diligently to ensure the safety of Americans imprisoned in Venezuela.
Know that we are still having conversations with a broad range of Venezuelans, working diligently to try and make the case to get every American returned home.
Young wrote a letter to the president and vice president urging them to do everything they can to bring Leininger home. He also told Pompeo that there are concerns about water access and conditions at the prison. The Indiana Senate approved an expansion this week of the state's Stand Your Ground law. The state's current law protects you from criminal charges if you use force to defend yourself, your property, or someone else. The proposed bill extends that to civil court. It says a criminal can't sue the person who used that justified force on them. The measure goes back to the House. The Indiana Senate approved legislation earlier this week that allows 12 and 13-year-olds accused of attempted murder to be tried in adult court. People that age accused of murder can already be moved to adult court, and some Republican lawmakers say it makes sense to do the same for those charged with attempted murder. But Democratic Senator Greg Taylor says the bill is vindictive justice. The legislation now heads back to the House. A controversial lending bill that narrowly passed out of the Senate is on its way to the House floor. One of the amendments lowers the interest rate cap for loans of less than $3,000 to meet the state's 72% rule. And while the cap was lowered to 167% on loans requiring no collateral, that number is still well above what's outlined in existing law. Democrats and consumer advocates had hoped to lower the state's interest cap to 36%, but that effort failed earlier this session. The central message of this week's State of Higher Education address is one Hoosiers have heard before. It focused on the need for a more skilled workforce. Commissioner for Higher Education Teresa Lubbers reinforced one of Governor Eric Holcomb's biggest priorities during her annual State of Higher Education address.
More than ever, the imperative to develop human capital is the most critical issue facing the state of Indiana.
In order to do that, she says education officials and employers need to work together. Lubbers says Indiana's largest industries are likely to see more automated jobs, but people with more education have a lower risk of losing their jobs to automation. The commission and Governor Holcomb aim for at least 60% of Hoosiers earning some kind of college credential by 2025. Drivers on State Road 37 could encounter lane restrictions north of Martinsville over the next couple of weeks. Transportation officials say survey crews started taking soil and pavement samples this week as part of I-69 Section 6 construction. The Indiana Department of Transportation says lane closures are needed to ensure workers' safety. Crews are widening roads in preparation for the construction of an overpass. Amanda Barge says she will not accept the Democratic nomination for Bloomington mayor if she receives enough votes in next month's primary. She suspended her campaign amid sexual harassment allegations, but her name will still appear on the ballot. Barge resigned as a Monroe County commissioner earlier this week. Incumbent Mayor John Hamilton will run unopposed in the Democratic primary. Niall Arena also plans to run as an independent. Independent or minor party candidates have until noon on July 1st to file a petition with 522 valid signatures from registered residents. Brown County State Park's north entrance will be closed until May 9th, while the covered bridge at the entry point is under repair. Doug Baird, the property manager at Brown County State Park, says they've known the bridge was in need of repairs for a few years.
Between our appeals to the Indiana Department of Transportation and their own inspections of the bridge, it was figured out it was time to get something done to it just to preserve it from further decay.
Workers will repair the flooring, siding, and roof on the bridge. Originally built in Putnam County in 1838, it's Indiana's oldest surviving covered bridge. Baird says park guests should use the park's west entrance, which is 2 miles south of Nashville on State Road 46. He says the northern entrance with the covered bridge is usually their busiest point of access to the park, but they set up an extra lane at their west entrance to accommodate any increased traffic. Well, Brown County schools are now offering free music lessons after school. Azra Jalon reports on how the idea came to fruition thanks to a few resourceful community members.
Bridget Reinheimer is a music teacher at Brown County Schools and works with the after-school music program.
A large portion of our community are low-income students, and they do not get the opportunity to travel, for example, to Bloomington or further for arts and culture. And we wanted to bring that culture to them and give them the exposure that we know so much enriches their lives.
Reinheimer says that she struggled in school, but then found an appreciation for music. She says that has made her a more successful person overall.
Once I started feeling proud about who I was and what I was doing, and I felt like I had a drive, and things started clicking. My brain started understanding things in a different, more open, creative, critical way.
Annie Hawk wrote the grant proposals for the project. She says being able to control an instrument gives students more confidence. Hawk says the program is also bringing the community together.
It's bringing older members of the community in contact with younger members of the community.
Reinheimer agrees. She says after-school programs give children a place to go from a difficult family situation or just having a bad day.
They come in and they're like, finally, there's a safe space. And it's a space where they feel home.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Azra Jalon.
And Bob Knight made his first public appearance on Indiana University's Bloomington campus since his departure following his 2000 firing. The former IU basketball coach attended IU baseball's doubleheader against Penn State Saturday afternoon with his longtime friend and former Herald Times sports editor Bob Hamill. Knight's visit came 2 days after he and Hamill hosted a public question and answer event in nearby Greenwood. Lots of mixed reactions on Twitter about that one, Joe.
Yeah, we know he's a controversial figure, but yet I think for the most part, it was kind of nice to see the general back on campus, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Barbara. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk, we talk to transportation officials across the state to find out how they decide which roads need repair. And we go back to a time when a Hollywood movie shook up a college town during one of its biggest weekends. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
The WTIU WFIU news team connects Indiana to the world. We bring you the top news of the day on radio, TV, and online. we round up the stories that have people talking each week and dig deep into the issues that affect your community the most. The WTIU WFIU news team is where you are and telling your story.
In a time of change, where can you find in-depth reporting and thoughtful analysis? Washington Week on PBS. Join moderator Robert Costa.
When I was at the Capitol this week, I encountered the same.
And a panel of award-winning journalists.
You're seeing a divided nation, and you're seeing
for insights and perspective.
Tonight there was a key development in the Senate.
You won't find anywhere else.
What a week.
Washington Week.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. A new service is now delivering the day's news to the blind and print-impaired community through new technology. Indiana Newsdesk's Mary Kate Hamilton reports on the new service available on all Amazon Alexa devices.
When Lee Martin lost his sight at 45 years old, he had to learn to use new tools to navigate his life. He first learned to use a long white cane. Then he was introduced to technology in a whole new way.
What would you like to read?
Read the Indiana Business Journal.
Reading an Indianapolis Business Journal dated May 1st, 2020.
The National Federation of the Blind Newsline is a free audio news service available to the blind and visually impaired. And now, NFB Newsline is accessible on all Amazon Alexa devices.
This may sound frivolous to those that have sight, but to those that can't see the print or turn the pages and access those products, this means the world to them.
NFB Newsline offers more than 300 different publications, including local, national, and international news, to allow the blind and print disabled to know the news of the day.
The thing about being blind is that when you are blind, you can, at some points, you feel somewhat isolated at first. Newsline, it lets you know basically that there's more than just you and blindness. There's a world out there.
NFB Newsline is also accessible via touch-tone telephone, iPhone, desktop or laptop computer, and Victor Reader. Amazon Alexa products now allow for hands-free access and increased efficiency for users.
It's just unspeakable how much technology has enlarged and enriched the world for blind people.
Jones says the service has been available for print-disabled Indiana residents for more than 25 years and continues to adapt.
We can't keep up in a sighted world without knowing how to use the tools that everybody else uses, or knowing how to use tools that will help us navigate those systems when they're not totally accessible.
Aside from news publications, the service also includes job listings, retail advertising circulars, and interactive TV listings. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Mary Kate Hamilton.
Well, this time of year, you'll see repair crews up and down Indiana roads patching a winter's worth of wear and tear and undertaking major repairs and resurfacing projects. Now, that led one viewer to wonder why certain roads are getting the attention while a pothole elsewhere may go untouched. As part of our Inquire Indiana series, Tyler Lake talks to transportation officials to find out how they decide what roads get repaired and when.
Why does the Indiana Department of Transportation do construction on the same roads every year, but not the roads that need it? That's the question one curious Hoosier asked, and it's a good one. We've all groused about that one rough road or nasty pothole, wishing someone would finally fix them. But it's not as simple as you think, because who's responsible for the roads we drive on a daily basis can be a tricky question.
So there are, at a high level, 3 classes of roads in the state of Indiana. One being the state highway system, which is maintained by INDOT. So those include interstates, I-65, I-70, I-69, others. In the state highway system, also U.S. highway routes. Those are all maintained by INDOT.
Manning says if you aren't on an interstate or a U.S. highway, there's a good chance you're on a road maintained by a county, city, or town. He says if that's the case, INDOT likely has nothing to do with the repairs. To make it even more complicated, city and county roads can be tough to distinguish from one another, and some state roads run through the heart of cities and towns.
But we do also have some state highways and state-maintained facilities within the actual corporate city limits of Bloomington. If you think of 3rd Street east of College Mall Road, headed towards Brown County, that entire stretch is going to be INDOT. The bypass north of 3rd Street all the way up to I-69 now, that's going to be state maintained and controlled.
While finding the party responsible for maintaining roads may not always be easy, once you find that information, getting the problem addressed can be.
We aren't going to know anything unless you pick up the phone and call. So calling with a complaint is the absolutely appropriate thing to do.
INDOT and most local governments have phone numbers, websites, and even apps to make it easier for Hoosiers to report roads in need of repair.
Come in person with your complaint. Come with pictures. Make sure you always send pictures. That's the very best thing to do because that gets it to our attention.
And those requests play a large role in how agencies prioritize road repairs. But they're not the only consideration when determining where precious road repair funds end up.
So when we're looking at a roadway, we're not only identifying any issues or areas of concern just on the surface that impacts the tires and wheels, we're looking all the way to the intermediate base layer. We're looking at the entire depth of the roadway.
And in Bloomington, they're using lasers to map every nook, cranny, and pothole on the city's roads.
Yeah, so they use LiDAR to do pavement condition indexing, where they will drive every city street and every lane of the city and get a very accurate measurement of the condition index of the pavement.
And there's still a lot to consider before sending a crew out to patch up pavement. A road with 5 to 10 drivers a day will be lower priority than one that sees 5,000 cars a day. And different departments often have to coordinate their projects to avoid extra work down the line.
We have a road project in the county right now where we have been waiting, is it now 2 years? Is it the water and sewer utility? They have a planned project out there and we didn't want to pave the road just to have them come back and dig it up.
And Manning, who maintains a lot of highways, says it's not just about how many vehicles travel his roads, but what kinds.
An 80,000-pound truck has about the equivalent impact on a roadway of just under 10,000 cars, which is significant. So roadways that see a heavy amount of traffic, a heavy amount of truck traffic, inherently have higher maintenance costs and they have more frequent needs.
But the biggest wrinkle in any road construction plan is money, or the lack of it. Musgrave says the money falls 2 to 3 times short of the need in Vanderburgh County. She says there are around 550 miles of road, and they aren't able to address more than 10 to 15 a year. She says a large chunk of road repair funds come from the gas tax, and falling gas prices can vaporize her projected revenue. And for Manning at INDOT, the fact that many of our interstate roads were built 4 to 5 decades ago is a looming problem.
In terms of the life of these assets, many of them are all either at or approaching a point in their life where they need either reconstruction or some pretty significant rehabilitation needs.
And that could mean a change in how the state prioritizes road repairs in the future. But for now, Manning says they've got it down to a science.
That decision of why is one road being worked on versus another, it's again driven by science, and it's a balance of preventative maintenance was also addressing some of those more urgent, larger capital needs.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Tyler Lake.
That is just the latest story from our Inquire Indiana series, but there's more to come. We want to explore the questions you have about the Hoosier State. You could even be part of the process as we dig deep to find the answers. Go to WTIU.org/InquireIndiana and tell us what you want to know. And now it's time for our History Through Headlines segment. It was April 1979. Jane Fonda had won an Oscar for Best Actress in Coming Home. Gloria Gaynor was ruling the music charts with her breakup anthem, I Will Survive, and a flock of celebrities came to Bloomington for the Little 500. "40 years ago, the headline read, movie means $1.5 million for Bloomington economy. Indiana University's 1979 Little 500 race wasn't the only feature in Bloomington that weekend. The IU Auditorium was hosting the premiere of Breaking Away, the movie filmed in Bloomington that follows local teenagers competing to race against IU students in the iconic Little 500 race.
Well, I think it's obvious that, you're having a Hollywood movie crew coming to Bloomington to film a movie, which turned out to be, it was nominated for Best Picture that year. It didn't win, but it did win an Oscar for Steve Tessich, the screenwriter, who was an IU graduate.
Cook says being familiar with Bloomington, he can pick out the mistakes.
For instance, in the scene that I mentioned earlier where he notices the girl drops her book and she goes off on a motor scooter and he gets on his bike, grabs the book and goes after her, you'll notice that in one place they are riding from west to east on that road between the Union Building and Owen Hall, and then in the very next scene they're riding the other way.
The Wells Library on the IU campus preserves newspaper clippings, movie posters, and photographs about the movie. Since the movie's premiere, the Little 500 started a women's race, moved locations, and grown in size, living up to its billing as the world's greatest college weekend.
Breaking away.
And it is Little 500 weekend this weekend in Bloomington, so if you're in the area, be safe. And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, streaming TV, home security, and automation in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members, thank you.